And now I have the honor to bring Frank Stern down to the podium, and that he is already here and will have his paper. We worked together now, I think, more than 10 years. He is a famous scholar in the US, in Israel, and also since many years here in Austria. He is a specialist on Jewish film, especially Israeli movies, and the impact of the visual image in the cultural history. Sorry, Frank, that you have to take over now, but perhaps on weather conditions or eating conditions, I don't know. He's not here.
Okay.
West.
Thanks, it's already on the screen, yes.
No,
back.
Okay. Okay, it works.
Yeah, okay. It works. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. I'm the second speaker, so whoever moves in later, I'm not Kotler, I'm just Stern. It's a mixture. I prepared, of course, a paper. I would like to show you everything that I believe currently is very important in Austria in order to deal with the right-wing government, with right-wing organizations, with racism and anti-Semitism that has established itself on the level of ministries, administration, and from day to day we hear more about this process. One should never compare because history is always different, but that's the process any right-wing movement throughout Europe can learn a lot. How you march through the institutions, how you get into government, how you change, and how you get hold of the police, of the security institutions, which I believe is most dangerous for Europe, because right now we know, that everything that the Vice-Chancellor Strache and the Minister of the Interior, who's responsible for the police and the security institutions, Verfassungsdienst and more, they have their direct friendship and line to Putin and to Marine Le Pen. So one should always be aware that political shifts in Austria have consequences for Europe, and of course they also have consequences for the relationship between Israel, State of Israel, and Austria. So we are in the middle of a process. It's more or less not the beginning, but it's the middle, and one can only warn. And so far, I'm very much embarrassed that our students from the Austrian student body representatives and the representatives of the Jewish student organization at Vienna University were pushed out yesterday. This is impossible. They are our allies that are on campus in our fight to combat anti-Semitism, and there is strong anti-Semitism at Vienna University. Now, this hasn't been really a topic at the conference, and I was very much astonished. We should also talk about what to do, how to fight anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic professors, students who are active here on our campus. I will refer to it later a little bit, but I know I have to be aware of time. Now, following, I want to concentrate on a number of examples of this ongoing process in society, in institution, in the media, in political communication. There are three three contexts that have been mentioned more or less on this conference. The first, of course, is Holocaust denial, and we all heard in the last few days about what is going on in Poland, and how the Holocaust denial that moved in, let's say, from right-wing deniers of the Holocaust, old Nazis, now has become more state legislation, like it is in Poland. This is a very, let's say, dangerous development, because other states with right-wing governments and strong anti-Semitism will look into this development. The second context we have dealt with is Zionism denial, although the term Zionism denial hasn't really mentioned. But we should also give this whole pattern of anti-Israeli propaganda, of anti-Zionist feeling, attitudes, and activities a name. It is Zionism denial. And the third context, which is very strong in Austria and in this morning's media, you could read it or watch it on TV, and this is antisemitism denial. After the publication of the new songbook of the fraternity, discovered just this week, and we'll show you lines from the songbook afterwards, with, let's say, a call to murder, to annihilate another 7 million, and to drown Jews. Songs that we believe would be dead, they're alive. They are sung with a very popular melody. And if I think that thousands of Burschenschafter fraternity members in Austria sing this also on campus and go to their holy place in the central building of the university, the so-called Siegfriedkopf, where they sing and do whatsoever, I think one has to do something at home and not just look abroad. Now, let me turn to the visual examples I prepared. You all know this very old image, 1,000-fold repeated in anti-Semitic propaganda before the protocols, of so-called protocols of the Elders of Zion, and later, and it has used in many, many contexts since then, in color, black and white, and so on. Now, in the year 2009, the FPÖ, the right-wing party, published comics, The Blue Planet, with HC. HC is Heinz Christian, it's the first names of Strache. He is the Superman who will save Austria and Europe. And the whole comic is directed against the European Union and as a fight for liberty against the European Union. And you know, today the FPÖ is declaring all the time, no, they are not against the European Union, they have changed. Well, now in this comic, which is meant to reach back then was meant to reach a younger generation and was distributed all over Austria, huge number, millions probably, kind of political right-wing education. And here you see to the left, kind of a face, and you see the claws, and you see something is burning, and Superman is already on his way. And if you look closer at it, you get, again, the old imagery, the connotations that we know from classical anti-Semitic propaganda. But it's not just the FPÖ, just to switch a little bit beyond the border of Austria to Munich, the Süddeutsche Zeitung, which is amazing, 5 years ago published this picture. And the young lady there, that's obviously Frau Merkel, it's Germany, serving Israel since decades for nothing with weapons. And the enemies of Israel believe that Israel's a Moloch, can't get enough. You would believe that Goebbels has ordered this kind of image, was widely published, was criticized, there was a debate about it. And it obviously relates to the very old, here with translation, the banks, the governments, the people, which was posted on the Facebook of Strache, the Vice-Chancellor, back then, of course, not Vice-Chancellor, but leader of his right-wing party, in 2012. Again, this goes back to the very old, popular image we know from the 1920s, 30s, and so on. Now, in another Austrian newspaper that is not explicitly right, but it is right-wing, Die Kleine Zeitung, it's kind of a yellow press you get for free at any station of public transportation in the city hall. There was in 2004, this one on the left side, the past, and on the right side, presence. Below is written once and now, so I don't have to say anything. This is obvious what is meant, and it relates very much to what you can see right now, the last few days, parallel to our conference on campus and in Vienna. And it's meant for you, it's not in German, so all the guests can easily understand and read. And this rather makes it clear what I mean with Zionism denial. It is not just killing another 7 million, but it's meant to annihilate the state of Israel, because if you look at the Palestinian flag, it is the kind of say the whole area on a map seen through Google. So those of you who won't know, the key is a traditional symbol used by Palestinians, be it in feature films, documentaries, or also in political movements from more, let's say, liberal to right-wing extermination-oriented groups, and everything you can also find on Facebook, and of course on the site of BDS Austria. So decolonized Palestine then speaks to all those who just believe that Israel is some kind of European colony established I don't know when. And I don't assume that the Austrian BDS people have got very much education. Otherwise, I would refer them to what the Pope Franciscus sent us as a message to our conference, or to the ongoing presence of Jewish life in these areas since antiquity. But this would be another topic, just to show you that that Zionism denial is very present in Austria. Oh, sorry, I pressed the wrong button. Could you put it? Yes, thank you. Emotionally, it's Freud, I know. This I'm going to show you. Some of you may know it. I don't know whether it has shown in another paper. It's a video by Hamas that came out last year. I will just show you a few minutes, not the whole. And it has become kind of cult status within anti-Zionist movements. And I'll show this short part to you because it has there's a combination of all the traditional anti-Jewish stereotypes relating to blood and whatsoever, the kind of who is a Jew, and combining European, East European, let's say physical and clothing, typical for Jews, so to say, typical, and the Israeli, the Sabra. And you will immediately see how this appeals to a younger generation. Oh, thanks. No. Could you? Yes, thanks. And sound. So the subtitles are in Hebrew. It's a song that's sung in Hebrew with a strong Arab accent, and it's kind of threatening the Israelis, the Jews, that Hamas will not only fight back, but kill, put into prison, asking the Fedayeen to prepare for a fight, for shooting. And what we have seen in the last few days, they will come into our living rooms and the blood metaphor as always. And this goes on, it's about 5 minutes. That's from propaganda film. And we should not underestimate how such propaganda films then again are used in Europe or the United States. And it's not enough to define them as cult status, but they are influential, particularly with the aesthetics of comic, appealing to a younger generation who is living in the world, in the internet world of comics, of visualizations and violence. Now back to the FPÖ, the party. This is the election campaign in 2009. And you have probably realized that Strache in the middle, the vice chancellor and chef of the boss of the FPÖ, is all the time stressing that he in fact loves Israel, is a friend of Israel, and so on and so on. And here you can see the real face in 2009 against joining the European Union by Turkey and Israel. So it's just a few years back. Here also 2009, the Occident should remain in the hands of Christians. Now, I'm very sorry, I'm not a Christian, but I strongly feel or felt like an European. And then it's kind of, the posters are dealing with honest work. People who are looking for asylum, they should be brought back to their homeland. Our land is for our children. It's now, the point is us, the Austrians, below Daham, statt Islam. Daham means in Austrian at home and not Islam. We need representatives of the people and not European Union traitors, and we need German and not people who say nichts verstehen, I don't understand, so it's racist, it's anti-Semitic, it's anti-Israel. So here you see him again, I'm sorry, the blood metaphor, moral cartridge for our Viennese blood. This has many connotations. The blood metaphor is very central in all racist propaganda, also in Austria, and the quotation marks also refers to a famous Strauss song, Wiener Blut, Wiener Blut. So it's popular. People can understand the racist connotations, and they can simply say, okay, it's nice, we want our Strauss waltz. So the double speak of anti-Semitism, of anti-Semites, is very obvious in such posters, political posters, and then in black, too much strange doesn't do any good. But since Austria is an agrarian country, one has to stress also that one needs pure race beef. Now, very important. Not just Argentine beef or kosher beef, but pure race beef. It has to be true. This is the homeland agrarian economy, and we don't want to be forced by the European Union to do something else. And I mean, if you take away the FPÖ below, this poster could be directly from the Nazi propaganda concerning the Bauernstand, the peasantry. Another one in Innsbruck, not just in Vienna, love for the home instead of Moroccan thieves. So you get everything. You could talk hours and hours if you go through the posters and political propaganda during the last few years all over Austria. And here the FPÖ copied a poster from Switzerland on the right and shifted it with the symbol of the city of Linz, indicating that in another 20 years there will be more people from the Near East and Africa than pure Austrians. And of course, the threatening image of the burqa, which is on and on one of the stereotypes although the only people in Austria who can watch in Vienna wearing a burqa, they're coming to do shopping from Saudi Arabia, and even this is less nowadays. Now, I have told you at the beginning that just yesterday, a new songbook by the fraternities was discovered, the so-called Brunner Sudetia. Sudetia means Sudetenland, former German Reich. And now you have more lines, because they weren't erased or blackened, of the songs that were sung by, that are sung, not where, it's not a Nazi text. It's a text written in the last decades. It's within the songbooks of the fraternities, and it's kind of rejoicement of our young generation, particularly at this university, focused on students of law and economy, which is the focus of the right-wing movement at Vienna University. Now, in the first one, it's kind of with the Jew Ben Gurion, to the Germans should give gas and succeed with another 7 million. And then you have extremely funny, cynical, two boys went through a gate. The one was named Isidor, the other was called Menashe. Just guess which race. And so it goes on. It's primitive, rhyming. Jews are dirty, they are stinking. Once they were swimming in the Nile, and one was eaten by a crocodile, and so on. 2 Jews were once bathing in a river. Since once a lifetime one has to bath, the one drowned, and we can only hope that the other will drown too, and so on. So this is a reality, and the melody is a very popular old German song you can constantly watch on the internet or on TV. Freut euch des Lebens, rejoice in life. And yeah, I think my time is running out. What else can I say? 2 things. Here at the university, there is among the law students, there are working groups and internet, chat rooms and so on. And a few in May 2017, these Facebook images were discovered and published. This is a scandal that was mentioned at this conference last year. And the rector also mentioned it without saying that something has been done against them. So on the left here, I just met you, and this is crazy, but here's your number, so Auschwitz may be. You become a number, you become member. In the middle, it's an old postcard, Happy Easter, and to the right, it's about reform of the studies here, and I think I'm missing the students who were here yesterday. And on the same, and this is I can't add anything to this. On the same Facebook, you have this leaked Anne Frank nudes, ashes, and they obviously think that this is extremely funny. And the point now is, it's not the FPÖ student groups, but ÖVP, the Chancellor's party. And Kurz himself was chair of the ÖVP People's Party youth organization for many, many years until he became chancellor. He retreated from this function only last year. And my question would be, as a responsible chairman who all the time pretends that he's in favor of Jews and Israel, what did he do all the time when chairing these young and students organizations? So leaked Anne Frank nudes you should always keep in memory when next week and the week after another anti-Semitic incident will pop up in Austria. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Frank Stern, for this wake-up call in the morning. Are there any questions from the audience? He was first.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And as a guest to Austria, it's very alarming to see it. And my question is about two different images that you showed. One is about the far right, many examples that you showed, and the other, the call to the Israel Apartheid Week. Usually the BDS movement associated with the radical left. So my question would be, how do you see, from your experience in the field, the radical right and the radical left, whether they cooperate, whether they work together, or they hate each other and they fight, and we are kind of Jews, kind in the middle?
Yes, I know it's the traditional division in studies of anti-Semitism, right, radical left, and many years ago at a conference on anti-Semitism in Jerusalem, Shaul Friedlander made a very strong point. Anti-Semitism is always right. There may be people on the left who have anti-Semitic opinions, but the contents of anti-Semitism is explicitly right. And if I look at our university and the students, for those who have been here yesterday, they are, for me, our left. It's the young generation opposing that we have in the BDS movements, also students who come from, let's say, the radical left, definitely. But it's not a real strong, forceful movement in Austria. In other countries, maybe, but not here.
Thank you for the presentation. One cannot say thank you for more than disturbing images. It's just disgusting. I think we all agree on this, and it's more than disgusting. One thing that I was wondering about while you spoke, you are here as the chair of the panel on media studies. We all have in this room, I'm sure, an agreement on the political perspective on this. But from your expertise as a media studies specialist, what can be done with a media studies perspective to fight this? Because that's actually the expertise we depend upon when we want to make our catalog of policies. So in that particular area, I'm sure there's easy answers like we have to forbid certain journals. I would love to be able to do that, but then they invent another one.
Who will forbid with the shifts in the system?
Aula, for example, yes?
Yeah. But I the last points I made, Holocaust denial, Zionism denial, and anti-Semitism denial, I just put on my talk after our panel, because this popped up very forcefully in the papers in our panel. But if you ask me now in terms of what can be done, I recall a period in Austrian history when there was no critical newspaper. And then someone who was living by then in New York was invited to establish a new newspaper in Austria, which is today called Der Standard, which started as a very, very strong newspaper against what was going on in politics and the government and the administration. And let's say, to be provocative, why isn't there enough money somewhere to establish a new and critical newspaper on a weekly or daily basis, which gives voice to democratic opinions, which discusses these and other matters? Right now, there are a few columns and articles in the Standard, and that's all we have in the media. Most other newspapers are not critical concerning the government because they are depending on ads, on promotion, on money that will come from this government. So in the media, it's not just a question to invite, which we also should do, journalists from the existing newspapers to talk with us about what we're doing. Rauscher at Der Standard is constantly writing. Today he published, yesterday he published, and today on the conference on problems of anti-Semitism. There are journalists here who are allies, potential allies, and we didn't think about it before the conference. So this would be one field. We should demand that the continuing adult education, for instance, of teacher, will be re-established, because today Austrian teacher, unless they have been in Klaus, mine, or some other courses, they don't know anything about the history of anti-Semitism. They don't know anything about Israel beyond what's told and shown in the current media. So one should invest in working with teacher union, go to schools. It's not just a question of witnesses of the past. They're fading away. But the younger generation of scholars and students has to deal more with what's going on in our school system. I think it has to be on a level of political pressure. And political pressure is in this country right now rather difficult to establish, because you need the people who will do it. So there would be more to say. Could go on and on with proposals what to do.
Just a short follow-up. That you presented us content which is unacceptable. Do you see any mechanisms to fight that content from your specialization? We all agree on the other recommendations you do, but I want to get your expertise as a media studies specialist here.
You know, we will have afterwards also the discussion on this, but if I see at our university that there are right-wing racist professors and students and nothing happens, all seem to be appeasement. Okay, they have their opinion, we have our opinion, they would like to kill us, okay, it's fine, it's just an opinion. You know, when Rector Engel mentioned the scandal with the Anne Frank nudes, he didn't mention the material, the disgusting things that are going on. Why didn't he say, okay, these students were all expelled from our university. The responsible teachers who knew about it, they have to get a disciplinary procedure or something. You know, we talk a lot about how disgusting everything is, but there are always things we can do. I don't think that in the long run we can influence the judicial system in Austria. There is now a change underway. FPÖ people are moving in on the university level. They are moving in, becoming the kind of board of the universities, which was now for the first time has a huge number of fraternity members. On the level of the judicial system, the highest court, the new nominations go to the right. So I'm extremely skeptical, and I believe that, as the old saying goes, the law will become blind on the left eye, or an eye where you see the historical legacy of the Holocaust and the post-war period. It is a question also how we can find allies in NGOs, which has been a topic already at the conference. There could be many more steps. We are not in a position now to manage the internet. We can just put pressure also on the level of the European Union and the institutions in Brussels and Strasbourg, because there you will find more an open ear for these topics. I mean, this doesn't really answer everything, but one could develop of here, of course, concrete measures, and one has to deal directly. We have to communicate directly with those we believe could be allies, with those we believe would go along with us against racism, because in the long run, it's a question of democracy. Is this country, those who are responsible, able to defend the democracy here. It's not just only a question of anti-Semitism and racism, but this always goes together. But there are more questions.
I wanted to emphasize that also the FPÖ changed the name of the party. It is called now Soziale Heimatpartei, which is very close to National
National Socialist,
NSDAP, very close to NSDAP. It's the people's name, nearly. Terrible.
Thank you. Thank you for raising forcefully the important issues of today. But let me, if I may, what can I say? Object this statement that you quoted from Friedlander. Friedlander said, according to you, I don't recall him saying this in his lectures, but you must be right, that anti-Semitism is on the right. And there are anti-Semites on the left?
Not on the right. That's always a misunderstanding. It is a right. Oh, sorry. It is a right attitude, habitus. That doesn't mean that we don't have leftists who also have these arguments.
But the way you worded it seemed so. And you have anti-Semitism on the left, not just anti-Semites, but ideologies, since the socialists, the French socialists who were anti-Semites until Corbyn and the Labour Party, etc. You have anti-Semites that are not individually anti-Semites, but it is anchored in ideology, in stances, and this has to do with what is going on in Austria, because if you say it's just right that is anti-Semite, sorry, anti-Semitism is not confined just to the right, and you cannot, I think, you cannot just divide society to the culprits on the right and those who are against them and are the pure of anti-Semitism.
Dina, the problem is if we talk in general terms about the world, this is okay, it's right. If you talk about Austria, you know, if I think about the student body organizations here, the communist youth student organization, the socialist student organization at our university are not anti-Semitic. Yeah? So one has always, the analysis of anti-Semitism has to be contextualized in time, in region, in place, in persons. And then one can say, okay, those and those. But to generalize, there is this left and right, and this doesn't work in Austria. This will never work when fighting, combating anti-Semitism. We have to define, not just have a good definition of what anti-Semitism is. We have to know who the anti-Semites are. Who are they? What's their attitude? What's their mentality?
Sorry.
Liliane, yeah. In this case, thank you.
Thank you so much, Frank. I totally agree with what you said, both about the political parties in Austria and the legal system. What I was surprised by in looking at the material that you showed was one poster in particular that seems to evoke a religious context, in which er, referring to Strache, was spelled with a capital E, capital R, which is reserved to speaking about God. So we have a very interesting situation. We have a poster that any good Catholic, if I would be one, would think of simply as blasphemy. We heard a wonderful letter by the current Pope read on Sunday. Now, I would like to know whether the Catholic Church in Austria is not in step with the Pope, has no interest in combating blasphemy. I'm not talking just about anti-Semitism, and is standing by and saying, okay, if the party is thinking of Strache as God, that's fine with me.
Well, you know, the answers will be given, I think, in the near future in relation to the address of the Pope to this conference. Which role will this address play among the clerus, among the priests, the bishops, and so on, the churches in Austria? Will this, for instance, lead immediately to one of your specialties to take off all the sculptures of the Christian children who were, so to say, murdered by Jews to use their blood for Pesach? We still have such images on churches in Austria. So here also it's a question, how would this address be transformed into acting?
Anti-Semitic, thank you, anti-Semitic imagery. It is the religious context on the other side in terms of celebrating what we might call the anti-Semites or the politically charged ones. And that is a real problem. And, you know, we had it in the past too, but this seems to me interesting that there was no response, because Catholicism is part of the Austrian Heimat.
Yeah. Just before Klaus will go into this a little deeper, you know, there was one poster, Abendland in Christenhand, the Occident in the hands of Christian, and there are other posters indicating that the Muslim minaret will be much higher than the Austrian churches. So they're playing also with these images to and fro. It's not the same what you meant, but the religious level is important, of course.
And Strache always uses the image of the crusader. He always, for speeches, once he took out a cross to show, I am the Christian crusader. It's also the anti-Semitic image of the dragon slayer. And the dragon is obviously the Muslims or the Jews. And so he, as the Nazis before, were using this religious image. But we have to go on, and it's going very late, I would say. No, we have no time to. I would say it's two questions.
Yvonne was.
Yvonne there, and then Mr. Weiss here.
Yes.
Mr. Weiss, you can start.
Bitte.
I think when one looks into trying to put an end to anti-Semitism, one has to look first in the nearest environment. And I want to ask you, yesterday, Jewish and non-Jewish students had the same statement that you had at the end of your talk. They have been forced out of this academic space by a professor of this university, on the request of a professor of this university, which is your employer, which was my former employer. What can you say about that?
We already mentioned it before. You came in late.
Well, this was the start of my talk, in fact.
I'm sorry I came late because I was forced to, for the first time in these 4 days, to leave my laptop bag outside. So therefore I came late.
Okay, just one sentence. As a professor of this university, those students are my allies in combating anti-Semitism, period.
I have a small question for you, Frank. What about media study centers? Why don't we take everything what we have learned here and talked about and put them into in a way that we can really make something out of it, like media centers, like a research of media, all sorts of things that you have mentioned should be learned and studied. And this way, as you said, we can learn who are our enemies, what do they think. They must be people that can research the society, their culture, through the media, because everything now in these days goes through the media. Through film, through visual art, through the internet, Instagram. If we won't touch it, we won't be able to take all the wonderful things we talked about and understand them. How does it look outside?
Yvonne is from Haifa, Culture and Film Department, we cooperate. And it's exactly, we need centers, but centers that do research on the one side and will be very practical in educating people who are going to work in the media, going out how to deal with media at school, how to teach teachers how to use the handy, the internet, and so on and so on. This is necessary. I doubt that this government will invest money in such necessary institutions. Just to give an example, when my contract finishes in the summer of 2019, the whole department, the whole focus of visual cultural studies will be closed down. It won't go on. So what I've talked partly about, and what the students are doing, the young scholars are doing, will no longer exist. Meaning a critical approach to the media will be out of office, so to say. Now, this is an example, it's a reality, but I agree with you. It should be a very strong focus, not just at Vienna University, but also at other universities in Austria. My chair is walking away. So was there another question? I think we have to move on. There is this, and then I think, Klaus, we have to
Thank you.
sit down. No?
Thank you very much for your talk and also now for the very practical suggestions. I very much liked when you at the end as one of the demands put also to put an end on anti-Semitism denial. I think this is a very important aspect. Also because we confront the problem that even in our circles, partly specific forms of anti-Semitism are denied, or we try to downplay it, or to marginalize it. And I think this is very important. And I wanted to ask in regards to the examples you brought. So most of the examples were quite explicit, but what we see is this tactics, which Strache really knows perfectly, to post these things and then to deny that it's anti-Semitic and then to deny that he had posted it or whatever in this and that he knew about it and so on. So denial is already part of this kind of very ambivalent addressing through images, through provocant sentences. And I wanted to ask how we can deal with this and how we can confront this without giving too much media space to these kind of provocations, but really to sensitize people to understand also these ambivalencies when it comes to images.
Well, in a short way, back in academic life through the ages, we had something like a general universal lecture series that all students had to take and to listen to. And I think today would be a day, in German you call it sometimes Ringvorlesung, but basically for all students, not just humanities and social sciences, but also the other disciplines, that there are some basic values and orientation today to fight anti-Semitism, racism, and the understanding, and in favor of the understanding of the cultural other. I think that such studium generale should again be established at university to form a younger generation in the right direction.